I'm Dr. Mohan Shriram Kamble. I did my graduation in mechanical engineering, master's in machine design, and doctorate in mechanical engineering from the VNIT. I was a professor and a head of the department, work in the various capacity at engineering colleges. Prior to the engineering college, I was with one of the public sector, Mangalore India Limited, for quite substantial period. I have come here live for answering the issues which said reservation has completed 75 years now, it should be banned. Some political leaders as well as some social leaders are raising such type of the issues and also hiding the realities. Now, those really I came here along with those realities. Initially, I will be speaking in Marathi, and the same contents will be repeated in Marathi. Sorry, initially I will be speaking in English, which will be followed by Marathi, so that the majority of the people can understand the reality of reservation. On 15th August after 1947, India got independence, and from 47 to 52, for the 5 years, there was a interim government which was ruling the independent India. It was not duly constituted or the elected government. It was a time gap arrangement. And after independence, this country was ruling without constitution. Now, immediately after independence, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru had deputed numerous committees to various democratic countries to study the constitution and identify the constitutionalist or the constitution expert to draft the constitution for India. About 11 committees were formed and they were deputed to the various countries where democracy was in. Out of those 11 committees, some of the committees, being London being a transit station, had visited London, and they come down to know that there is a department of political science at the London School of Economics. They had visited the London School of Economics and made the Department of Political Science the Professor Edwin Cannon and Professor Herbert Foxwell. Professor Herbert Foxwell was a head of the Department of Political Science, professor and the head of the department. The committee had discussed, they had put forth their requirement about drafting a constitution for independent India. Professor Foxwell and Professor Edwin had a very long discussion with those committees and asked them to accord some time to convey their decision. Accordingly, the committee came back, and immediately after the committee left Department of Political Science at London School of Economics, Professor Foxwell wrote one article in the newspaper of London Herald. That was probably 21st of August 1947. And he has mentioned what foolish people are ruling the India. He has mentioned what foolish people are ruling in India. He further state how idiots are there in India when the two world-class experts of constitution or the constitutional experts are available with themselves. They are roaming all around the world. Professor Foxwell named two persons, out of which one was Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and another was Mr. Jogendranath Mandal. Immediately after appearing those news in the London Herald, then Prime Minister of London, Mr. Willie, probably, had spoken to the Indian counterpart, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Also, he had spoken to the Mountbatten, who was there in India even after independence. Then, accordingly, the day after next, when that particular news appeared, Queen Elizabeth also spoke to Lord Mountbatten. And on 29th of August, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru declared Dr. B.R. Ambedkar as a chairman of Drafting Committee of India and Mr. Jogendranath Mandal as a chairman of Drafting Committee of Constitution for Pakistan. This is how Dr. Ambedkar was selected. Now, Dr. Ambedkar has prepared his constitution, not his constitution, constitution for India, working extensively for 2 years, 11 months, and 18 days. And that was presented on 26 November 1949, which subsequently was adopted on 26 January 1950. It was adopted by the Government of India, which was a interim government after independence. The same government continued up to 1952, and from 47 to 1952 there was no constitution for this country. The reservation was provided as per the constitution in section 16 as article 15 of Constitution of India. The article 16(4), 4 and 6, it gives reservation in government jobs. Parliamentary state legislation reservation was given as per the article 334 of Constitution of India. Then in 1951 elections were held, the results were declared, and duly constituted members parliament was formed on 17th April 1952. On the same day, Rajya Sabha was also formed, and both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, that is the lower house and upper house, started functioning after independence on 13th of May 1952. So when they have started their functioning, there was a discussions on a reservation. There was so many discussions on the various articles of constitution prior to 1952 and after the duly constituted Lok Sabha or government. After discussion, preparation of government resolution, that is a GR, its correction, its amendments, not amendments, its enactment took time about 1.5 years, to be specific, 18 months. So there was no reservation from 47 to 52. So there was no reservation for 5 years, where there was a interim government. Why this reservation was included in the constitution by Dr. Ambedkar? As far as the Indian history is concerned, there is a historical injustice meted out to the people of marginalized community prevalent in the Hindu culture. Prior to the constitution, prior to the independence, there was a constitution called Manusmriti which was in existence. As per the those prevalence of a caste system, which was a indispensable part of a Hindu community, this hinders this provision of caste system hinders the development of weaker section and the consequences of the caste system which was prominently in the existence. In the providing the reservation, the main motto was to give the proper representation to those marginalized communities or the societies. Now, in 1952, after the constitution was accepted, or the after duly Lok Sabha was constituted and the implementation of a constitution began, there was a provision of reservation for those reservation of reservation in education, or the reservation in admission to the educational institutes. Now, to encourage this particular participation of a marginalized community, some more provisions were made, like concessions in the school fees, a scholarship, along with the relaxation of age. There are now the four reservations were mentioned in the Article 16.4, or the provisions were made in as per the reservation, that is admission in educational institutes, reservation in employment, reservation in promotion, reservation in political legislation and parliament as per Article 334 of the Constitution of India. Now, because as per the caste system which was prevalent in India, the member of this particular marginalized community was not allowed even to enter the premises of a school. Now, when it was implemented in 1952, it was the first time when the reservation was given, and those candidates were allowed to take admission in the schools. The rights which was denied for thousands of years as per the prevalent caste system in India, it was eliminated by provision of a law, and the fundamental right, that is the right of education, was included, and its implementation was started in 1952. So there was no educated person belongs to this particular caste or community or marginalized society who were facing agonies like untouchability till 1952. Now, the entry level for the services, there was a reservation in employment. The minimum age for employment, which was prescribed by the government, that was 18 years, and where The graduation was a criteria for the post like class 2, class 3, class 2 and class 1. The age limit was 21 years. So for those 21 years, not even a single candidate belonged to this particular community was available for employment. When these people started their education, where 10th class or below was the educational criteria for the recruitment, the posts like peon, chaukidar, security guard, and safai kamgar that were filled. So that also took 18 years, minimum 18 years, because minimum 18 years was a criteria for joining the services. So 1952 plus 18 up to 1970, there was no candidate pertaining educated candidate who qualifies for the putting their applications for the employment. For graduate persons or for the post where the graduation was a criteria, for 21% there was no candidate available. Even then, those post was advertised as per the directives of the constitution and directives of the various department. Now MPSC and UPSC, Union Public Service Commission and State Service Commission, they used to advertise the post, and if candidate is not available, they used to advertise the post for 3 times, and then they used to convert that reserve category post to the open category and filled by the open category. So after 1952, for about 21 years, the post of reserve category candidate was converted to the open category and filled by open category. So the only open category candidate were recruited against the reserve category seats by de-reserving the seats after advertising the post for the 3 times. This policy of de-reservation was effectively implemented throughout the country, either by state government as well as by the central government. Now, in those 21 years, 1952 to 1973, all posts were occupied by the open category candidates, and because no reserve category candidate was available. So when there was no candidate at all, reservation was not filled up, and this is the main reason why the backlog of reservation goes on piling up. Now, when the candidate become eligible after 1973, when the person get qualified and appear for the interviews, he was denied by stating the reasons like candidate is not eligible, candidate is not competent, candidate is qualified, eligible, but not competent. Stating the permutation combination of these three, they used to keep the post vacant, and after advertising for 3 times, they used to de-reserve and filled up by the open category post. Now, this was effectively carried out till 2009. This was effectively carried out in services up to 2009. Some people was recruited, no doubt, but it was a very few percentage. The reservation which was filled up to 2009 was not more than 18%. Then in 77th Amendment in Constitution by Constitution Act 1955, new clause 4A was inserted to provide reservation in promotions. When the candidate joined the services, acquired certain level of proficiency and seniority, when he become eligible for promotions, when he was about to be promoted, another policy of spoiling their confidential report was adopted by stating that his performance is not satisfactory, not up to level. These are the remarks which were given in his annual confidential reports, and promotions were denied. The 81st Amendment Act 2000, it inserted in Article 16(4)(b), which enable the states to fill the unfilled vacancies of the year in the succeeding year. Whatever the backlog which was in existence, they used to fill up, they were allowed to fill up in the next succeeding years. And the ceiling of 50% was relaxed. Then this was continued up to 2009, effectively continued up to 2009. Then in 2010, dated 11/6/2010, while resolution number 3601 on 1/6/2010, the policy of de-reservation, or the clause of de-reservation was included, where the persons were restricted to convert into the open category. Even under that condition, stating the reasons like urgency, the statutory, the posts were filled up on a ad hoc basis for 1 year. Posts like flood relief, accident restoration and its relief, or the extingent medical facilities. These were the reasons mentioned, and those posts were filled up on ad hoc basis for 1 year. And many times that was continued for several years and then ultimately regularized. So this is the way how the reservation was denied to the candidates pertaining to the reserve class category. Prior to 2009, then LPG policy was adopted by Government of India under the agreement of GATT. This policy of liberalization, privatization, globalization was adopted to reform the economic policy. Now, to reform the economic policy, to enhance the country's economy, international competitions reforms were made to remove the rigidity of various segments and sections. Loosening of the government control over the departments and encouraging the private parties' participation was allowed to for the economic growth of a country. In transferring those, or the allowing those private parties to encourage the foreign trade with regulated imports and exports, enhancing the foreign capital, expansion of global market of a country, and to minimize the debt burden of a government. These are the five reasons of accepting the GATT or the implementation of LPG policy. Even the privatization was promoted in the public sectors, government sector, and the government owned enterprises by means of disinvestments, by withdrawing the government ownership and management in the case of the public sectors, where those private parties were given the condition of continuing the policies, government policies as it is, but they had eliminated the policy of reservation, transferring the policy of reservation. In fact, that policy of reservation was totally nullified and eliminated when it was transferred to the private parties. Those private parties were allowed for retrenchment of employees by giving a compulsory retirement, by offering a voluntary retirement, and by offering a golden shake hand scheme. The sole purpose of providing this type of the terms and condition was to minimize the or downsize the size of employment. Now, in this transfer policy, a reservation policy which was removed or eliminated, and private parties were allowed to operate those organizations at their framing their own policies. There is no reservation in the private sectors. Almost all the policies, including contribution towards the provident fund, gratuity, incentives, all the policies were transferred, and it was a transfer with the terms and conditions. But the policy of reservation was not forwarded, or it was not allowed to continue in the private sector. Now, because of privatization, the organizational size was also increased, and the avenues for the reservation also decreases. Now, because of the decrease in the or the downsizing of the government organizational size, again the reservation was denied. This is the way how reservation was implemented from 1952 till today. Now, those who are saying that 75 years has completed and reservation should be banned, my humble submission is that for about 23 years, 1952 to 20 plus 21, that is up to 1973, because reservation candidate was not available, where the question arises about the providing a reservation in the employment to those marginalized community. So about up to 1971, the reservation begins because the candidates were available either at the 10th standard, 12th standard, up to the graduation level. And when the candidates were available, the policy adopted for de-reservation by converting the reserve category post and converting it to the open category, that was effectively implemented. So effectively, the reservation was not completed 75 years. In fact, it has completed less than 50 years. This is my answer to those honorable leaders and social workers who are saying that reservation has completed 75 years of age. Now it should be banned. Hereafter, I will be speaking in Marathi. मी डॉक्टर मोहन कांबळे नागपूरचा रहिवासी आहे. बी मेकॅनिकल एमटेक इन मशीन डिझाईन आणि PhD इन मेकॅनिकल इंजिनिअरिंग मी VNIT या संस्थेतून केलेलं आहे. बराच काळ मी एका पब्लिक सेक्टरमध्ये होतो. त्या पब्लिक सेक्टर नंतर मी अकॅडमिक्स म्हणजे शैक्षणिक क्षेत्रात आलो. तिथे लेक्चरर, असोसिएट प्रोफेसर, प्रोफेसर अँड हेड आणि काही काळासाठी प्राचार्य सुद्धा होतो. सध्याच्या परिस्थितीत सध्या मी एक एंटरप्रिनर म्हणून आहे आणि महाराष्ट्र इंडस्ट्रियल डेव्हलपमेंट कॉर्पोरेशन MIDC एरियात माझं एक स्मॉल स्केल इंडस्ट्री आहे. ह्या व्हिडिओवर येण्याचं माझं एकच तात्पर्य आहे की आजकाल बऱ्याच लोकांच्या तोंडून, काही नेते, काही सामाजिक कार्यकर्ते यांच्या तोंडून आरक्षणाला 75 वर्ष झाले ते बंद करण्यात यावं अशा सूचना देण्यात येत आहेत. फक्त सूचनाच देण्यात येत नाही, पण ते आंदोलनामार्फत पूर्ण देशामध्ये पसरविण्याचा प्रयत्न करत आहेत. त्या बाबतीत मी आपल्या समोर त्याचे थोडक्यात उत्तर म्हणून आपल्याला देऊ इच्छितो. भारताला 1947 मध्ये स्वातंत्र्य मिळाल्यानंतर 1947 ते 1952 असे 5 वर्ष इथे इंटेरिम गव्हर्नमेंट होती. ह्या भारताला संविधान नव्हतं. भारतात मनुस्मृती नावाचं संविधान अस्तित्वात होतं. .15 ऑगस्ट 1947 ला भारताला स्वातंत्र्य मिळाल्याबरोबर तत्कालीन प्रधानमंत्री पंडित जवाहरलाल नेहरू यांनी जवळपास 11 समित्या निर्माण केल्या. 11 कमिटीज त्यांनी फॉर्म केल्या आणि वेगवेगळ्या देशाचं संविधान, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन जे आहे त्याचा अभ्यास, त्याचप्रमाणे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन लिहिणारे, संविधान लिहिणारे एक्सपर्ट्स हे शोधण्याकरता जगभर त्या समित्या पाठवल्या. जिथे जिथे लोकशाही अस्तित्वात होती अशा देशात ते पाठवण्याचा प्रयत्न झाला. युरोप मध्ये जाताना लंडन हे एक ट्रान्झिट हॉल्ट आहे. तिथे जवळपास 4 समित्या ह्या लंडन स्कूल ऑफ इकॉनॉमिक्स येथे गेल्या आणि तिथे गेल्यानंतर तिथलं डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ पॉलिटिकल सायन्स जे आहे तिथे त्यांनी प्रोफेसर एडविन कॅनन आणि प्रोफेसर हर्बर्ट फॉक्सवेल, प्रोफेसर फॉक्सवेल हे तिथे प्रोफेसर आणि हेड ऑफ द डिपार्टमेंट होते पॉलिटिकल सायन्सचे, आणि त्यांच्याबरोबर त्यांनी चर्चा केली. चर्चा केल्यानंतर आपण भारताचं संविधान बनवा अशी त्यांना विनंती केली. त्यांचं जे डिसिजन होतं ते सांगण्याकरता त्यांनी थोडा वेळ मागितला आणि जवळपास पूर्ण दिवस त्यांच्या बरोबर चर्चा झाल्यानंतर त्यांना भारताचं संविधान लिहिण्याची विनंती करण्यात आली. त्या विनंतीचं उत्तर देण्यासाठी काही त्यांनी वेळ मागितला. त्याच्यात दुसऱ्या दिवशी प्रोफेसर फॉक्सवेल यांनी लंडन हेराल्ड ह्या वर्तमानपत्रात एक लेख लिहिला. त्या लेखामध्ये असं लिहिलं की हा कसा काय मूर्खांचा देश आहे, इथे कसे काय बावळट लोक भारतात राजकारणी म्हणून देश चालवत आहेत, अशा प्रकारची त्यांनी भाषा वापरली. त्यांनी पुढे हे म्हटलं की ह्या देशाजवळ जगातले सर्वोत्कृष्ट 2 कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल एक्सपर्ट, संविधान लिहिणारे तज्ञ उपलब्ध असताना हे मूर्ख जगभर संविधान लिहिण्याचे एक्सपर्ट शोधासाठी फिरत आहेत. त्यावेळी त्यांनी 2 नावं त्यांच्या त्या लेखात लिहिले. पहिलं नाव होतं डॉक्टर B.R. आंबेडकर आणि दुसरं नाव होतं जोगेंद्रनाथ मंडल. त्या लंडन हेराल्ड मध्ये संपादकीय असं ते त्यांचं मनोगत होतं. ते आल्यानंतर सिमेंट ॲटली हे तेव्हाचे जे प्रधानमंत्री इंग्लंडचे होते, त्यांनी भारताच्या प्रधानमंत्री पंडित जवाहरलाल नेहरूंशी चर्चा केली आणि याबाबत त्यांना सांगितलं की ह्या जगातले सर्वोत्कृष्ट 2 कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन एक्सपर्ट, संविधान तज्ञ तुमच्याकडे असताना तुम्ही मूर्खासारखे का जगभर फिरता. त्याच्यानंतर तिथली राणी क्वीन एलिझाबेथ II ही लॉर्ड माउंटबॅटनशी बोलली आणि त्यांचं म्हणणं लॉर्ड माउंटबॅटनच्या मार्फत हे पंडित जवाहरलाल नेहरूंना कळवण्यात आलं. आणि त्याच्यानंतर 29 ऑगस्ट 1947 म्हणजे ह्या ज्या कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन शोधायला ज्या समित्या गेल्या होत्या त्या परत यायच्या अगोदर डॉक्टर बाबासाहेब आंबेडकर यांचं नाव चेअरमन फॉर ड्राफ्टिंग कमिटी ऑफ इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन आणि जोगेंद्रनाथ मंडल चेअरमन ऑफ ड्राफ्टिंग कमिटी ऑफ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन फॉर पाकिस्तानचं संविधान लिहिण्याकरता यांचं नाव डिक्लेअर करण्यात आलं. 2 वर्ष 11 महिने 18 दिवस अभ्यास करून डॉक्टर बाबासाहेबांनी ते संविधान लिहिलं आणि 26 नोव्हेंबर 1949 रोजी ते सादर केलं, जे 26 जानेवारी 1950 ला ते मान्य करण्यात आलं. त्या संविधानाच्या आर्टिकल 16 मध्ये आणि आर्टिकल 15 मध्ये आरक्षणाची तरतूद केलेली आहे. त्याच्याच आर्टिकल 4 आणि 6 मध्ये रिझर्वेशन इन गव्हर्नमेंट जॉब्स, सरकारी नोकऱ्यांमध्ये आरक्षण याची तरतूद करण्यात आली आहे. भारताच्या आर्टिकल 334 प्रमाणे पार्लमेंटरी, स्टेट लेजिस्लेशन आणि लोकसभा याच्यात सुद्धा आरक्षण देण्यात आलेलं आहे. 1951 मध्ये भारतात इलेक्शन्स घेण्यात आले, पहिले इलेक्शन्स घेण्यात आले आणि 17 एप्रिल 1952 रोजी ड्युली कॉन्स्टिट्यूटेड लोकसभा आणि राज्यसभा अस्तित्वात आली. म्हणजे 47 ते 52 जिथे भारताला कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन नव्हतं, ते कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऍक्सेप्ट करण्यात आलं 1950 ला, पण त्याची अंमलबजावणी ही ड्युली कॉन्स्टिट्यूटेड सरकारच करू शकत होती आणि ते सरकार अस्तित्वात आलं आमचं 13 मे 1952. म्हणजे पार्लमेंट ही 13 एप्रिल 1952 ला झाली आणि पहिलं पार्लमेंटचं सेशन जे आहे 13 मे 1952 ला सुरुवात झाली. ते पार्लमेंट ड्युली कॉन्स्टिट्युटेड म्हणजे इलेक्टेड आणि ड्युली कॉन्स्टिट्युटेड असल्यामुळं ते भारताच्या संविधानात असलेल्या तरतुदी म्हणजे प्रोव्हिजन्स त्याच्यावर बनणारे गव्हर्नमेंट रिझोल्युशन नियमावली हे सर्व बनवण्याकरता जवळपास 18 महिने गेले. म्हणजे 47 ते 52 इथं देशात कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनच नव्हतं, तर त्या कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनचे रिझर्वेशनचे प्रोव्हिजन अस्तित्वातच नव्हते. म्हणजे ते 5 वर्ष आरक्षण नव्हतं. ते 1952 नंतर जेव्हा रिझर्वेशन इन एज्युकेशन भारताच्या हिंदू प्रणालीनुसार ह्या अनुसूचित जाती जमाती आणि मार्जिनलाइज जो समाज होता त्या याच्यात ते हिस्टोरिकल इनजस्टिस मिटेड आउट असं म्हटलेलं आहे. हिस्टोरिकल injustice meted out in the people of marginalized community prevalent in a Hindu or Indian culture. हजारो वर्षाचा मनुस्मृतीचा इतिहास आणि हिंदू धर्माचा इतिहासात जिथं अनुसूचित जाती जमाती काही जमाती आणि काही सेक्शन्स यांना जी हीनतेची वागणूक देण्यात आली होती, त्या कास्ट सिस्टममुळं ह्या भारतात ह्या अनुसूचित जाती जमातीच्या लोकांना शिक्षण घेण्याची सुद्धा परवानगी नव्हती. शाळेच्या परिसरात सुद्धा शिरण्याची मुभा नव्हती. आणि अनटचॅबिलिटी हा दुसरा एक पार्ट होता. छुआछूत ज्याला हिंदीत म्हणतात, अस्पृश्यता ज्याला मराठीत म्हणतात. तर ज्या लोकांना तुम्ही शाळेतच जाऊ देत नव्हते, त्या लोकांसाठी रिप्रेझेंटेशन म्हणून भारताच्या संविधानात ह्या आरक्षणाच्या तरतुदी करण्यात आल्या. हे मी काही नवीन सांगत नाही. 1952 नंतर शाळेमध्ये शैक्षणिक क्षेत्रात आरक्षण लागू झालं. तोपर्यंत भारतात अनुसूचित जाती जमातीच्या लोकांना शिक्षणाची मुभा नव्हती. ती संविधानात आर्टिकल 16 नुसार आरक्षण देऊन ती करण्यात आली. त्याच्यासाठी शिक्षणाला प्रमोशन देण्याकरता त्याच्यात अजून काही तरतुदी करण्यात आली, जसं फी कन्सेशन, स्कॉलरशिप्स, रिलॅक्सेशन ऑफ एज ह्या सुद्धा देण्यात आल्या. आता 4 प्रकारचे रिझर्वेशन्स भारतात अस्तित्वात आहेत त्या नियमाप्रमाणे. एक तर रिझर्वेशन इन एज्युकेशन इन्स्टिट्यूट म्हणजे शैक्षणिक संस्थांमध्ये आरक्षण, रिझर्वेशन इन एम्प्लॉयमेंट रोजगारात शासकीय रोजगारांमध्ये आरक्षण, रिझर्वेशन इन प्रमोशन्स म्हणजे बढतीमध्ये आरक्षण देण्यात आलेलं आहे. आणि पॉलिटिकल लेजिस्लेशन मध्ये आणि पार्लमेंटमध्ये आर्टिकल 334 प्रमाणे ते आरक्षण देण्यात आलेलं आहे. आता जिथे शैक्षणिक पात्रता ही कंडिशन होती, त्या कंडिशन प्रमाणे